Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today, or this evening, to basically just listen to some incredible authors speak about their books. We have tonight. We're very lucky to have KX Song in conversation with Katie Keridan. They're here to talk about Katie's new release, the sequel to Rain Returned, Blood Divided. They're going to chat, talk through it. You are going to have the option and the time to ask questions because we are on Crowdcast. If you want to ask a question, you can go over to the Q&A button that's right under the chat. Feel free to send any questions that you're having or that you would like answered through there at any point. And then when they decide to transition into the Q&A portion of the evening, we'll get to those and be able to ask them, and you don't have to worry about forgetting them in that moment. First things first, I'm so grateful to bring KX Song, or to have KX Song here to chat with Katie. KX Song is a diaspora writer with roots in Hong Kong and Shanghai. Raised between cultures and languages, she enjoys telling stories that touch the collective memory, translation, and the shifting nature of memory and history. A Highlights Foundation Fellow and H.G. Wells Turnell Prize honoree. She has been awarded residencies at the Ragdale Foundation and the Anderson Center at Tower View. She is the author of An Echo in the City and the forthcoming The Night Ends with Fire, her adult fantasy debut. You can also look her up at the website, kxsong.com. And then we're so happy to have her here to discuss Blood Divided and whatever else they feel like with Katie Keridan. Katie Keridan is the author y'all came here to see, but Katie has previous work publishing as a pediatric neuropsychologist. And while she enjoyed contributing to cancer research, wow, my words are cutting off at the weirdest places, I'm sorry. Cancer research, now she is focused on fantasy. Her award-winning debut young adult fantasy novel, Rain Returned, came out in 2022, and we're here today to celebrate the sequel, Blood Divided. Her work has been published in many literary magazines, and she loves sharing her writing with others who feel different, misunderstood, or alone. Katie lives in Northern California with her husband and two very demanding cats, and I love it when an author includes their pets in their bio. So, without any further ado, I'm going to bring the two authors to the stage, and they're going to sound so much more eloquent than I have been. And then, if you're listening to this whole discussion and you haven't purchased Blood Divided yet, go to that cute little button at the bottom of the screen and you'll be able to purchase it from our small independent bookseller. And if you pre-order through us, or no longer pre-order, but if you purchase through us, you'll get an exclusive art card, which is absolutely worth it. And you can check that out on the page for the event. Alrighty, here we go, bringing out our authors. When the screen makes, oh gosh, okay, hit one. Oh no, what's going on? I pinned it instead. Every day it's a new issue. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, it's what's going on in the Zodiac that's making everything being so crazy here.
Right. Somehow pinned someone and then that okay. Well, have a great chat. Can't wait to hear it all.
So happy to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be chatting with Katie tonight about Blood Divided. This book has absolutely everything from, you've got magic, you've got romance, you've got adventure, you've got politics. There's just so much happening in one book. And so, Katie, I want to start from the very beginning. How did you get the idea for this story? And then how did you go about transferring that idea into this full-grown book that you have today?
That's a great question. First of all, let me just say thank you all so much for your patience. Technology was not on my side tonight. It looks like things are up and running. Thank you so incredibly much, Mysterious Galaxy, for being my favorite bookstore in the entire world and for letting me have this opportunity. And Crystal, thank you so much for being here and doing this with me. I'm so excited. Honestly, I kind of just did this so we could hang out because we don't get to see each other often. But jumping into your question, I have always loved to write, and my dad is actually viewing this and participating tonight. So hi, Dad. He can attest, I was that kid who was stapling paper together to make little booklets. I was writing my own little stories from the time I could hold a pencil. And in my mind, kind of wildest dreams, I loved the idea of growing up and being an author and writing and publishing books. I was the first person in my family to go to college, so it was really important to me to pick a career that was financially stable. And when you think of author, financially stable is not the first two words that come to mind. So I ended up taking an academic route, went into medicine, but I always had these ideas in my head of stories that I wanted to write. And so it was really around 2015, 2016 that these two characters, Kyra and Sebastian, started popping up in my mind and wanting attention. And I started taking it seriously when they didn't go away. And so I would write down little scenes with them, but I never really thought it was going to turn into what it's become until I believed in myself enough to take my writing seriously. So I think parts of them have been with me for a very long time. Now they're just getting to breathe and be shared with the world.
That's amazing. And you can really tell that you have lived with these characters in your head for so long because they feel so three-dimensional and lifelike, like they feel like people that you've been talking to for many, many years. I'm curious, as a dual point of view novel, was there one perspective that was easier to write than the other?
I love this question. And I'm sure my husband is laughing right now because he knows what I'm going to say. Sebastian has always come easier to me than Kyra. I like to say Sebastian is who I am. Kyra is who I aspire to be. And it's funny because when I first started writing, I was fortunate to work with A.R. Capetta. They are not only an award-winning fantasy author themselves, they're also a phenomenal editor. And the first feedback letter I got over my first draft, everything about Sebastian was so positive and like, wow, you really know this character. You've thought about this. So I'm reading through editorial notes, just kind of patting myself on the back. And then, you turn the page and my editor's like, and now we get to Kyra. Katie, this character needs some work. And by some work, I mean massive revisions. And I think what's interesting to me is it's a lot of fun to write a character like Sebastian, who's an assassin with no rules, who lives only for himself and by his own moral compass. Whereas Kyra has a family, she has friends, she's in a very different position. And so when you start with a good character, either they're going to have to become a villain or they're just going to become a better character. But when you start with a villain, there's kind of no place for them to go but up. So that was a lot of fun with Sebastian. Kyra took a lot more work to get that voice and that point of view where I wanted her to be, that did her character the justice I felt like she deserved.
That's really fascinating. And I've actually never considered that when you start with a villain, there's nowhere to go but up. I think that's really interesting. And that's a great point. On the flip side, just to play devil's advocate, I wonder if you're not giving yourself enough credit because oftentimes villains are hard to empathize with, but readers, I'm sure, empathize a ton with Sebastian.
I hope so.
So outside of these two protagonists, you also have so many diverse and abundant side characters. And out of curiosity, was there any side character that you just ended up falling in love with that you didn't mean to give a lot of screen time, but they ended up sort of taking over their own space in the story?
It's so hard to pick because I love all of them. Adonis really wormed his way into my heart. I expected Dimitri to because he starts out as Kyra's best friend. Dimitri is his own amazing character. But Adonis really wormed his way in and kind of managed to give himself a much bigger role in especially the second and the upcoming third book than I initially intended for him to have. And I had the most fun writing some of his bromance scenes with Sebastian. You know, Sebastian does not have friends. He's very isolated. He's starting to come out of his shell some in the second book and realize that not everyone is a threat that needs to be immediately taken care of. But it's interesting how he and Adonis start to kind of form this tentative friendship. And that really allowed Adonis to play a larger role. And so when it sounds funny to say, when I saw what was happening between these two characters, as if they didn't just sprout from my mind, but as an author, you know how it is. Our characters take on lives of their own. And when they want something, far be it from me to deny them. So definitely Adonis.
I absolutely love that. And I love that you're just allowing the story to sort of take on its own path too. I think that that's one thing that a lot of authors struggle with, where if we start from an outline, and especially for sequels, you have a very clear understanding of what needs to take place in the story. And so for you to also have that freedom to navigate the unknown, ambiguous space really creates those fresh ideas in this story that you almost didn't come up with on your own, even though you did.
That's it. Exactly. Exactly. It's very, it makes me think of Inception, where they're talking about, you know, here's the dream and here's the dreamer. And right there is the point where kind of the magic happens. That's the relationship between an author and their writing for sure.
Definitely. And I was reading, I can't remember who the author was, but I was reading another book about writing, and they were talking about the power of the subconscious and how so much of the rich creativity and idea generation happens in that subconscious state. But in order for us to bring it out into the open, we have to not let our consciousness take control and take the reins, and instead be more okay with that gray area of not knowing in order for the subconscious to then rise. So love what you're doing here. So many great themes in this book. I don't even know where to start with themes. There's just, from healing from, long buried traumas to learning how to communicate in romantic relationships, even when it gets uncomfortable or sometimes messy. I'm curious, what made you choose to focus on these themes? And was there anything you took from real life that you put into the book? Conversely, was there anything that you learned from the book that you then applied to real life?
Oh, that's such a good question. I will say it's been so much fun. A lot of the reader feedback I've gotten has been, I've never read a YA fantasy novel with such a focus on clear communication. And it's so great to get those kind of messages, especially from teens and young adults who are in relationships, sometimes for the first time, because I don't know about you, but I did not grow up learning how to communicate in the healthiest way possible. In my marriage with my husband, when we started out, we realized that we needed to figure out how to learn the language that the other spoke in order to really understand and support one another. And these were hard earned lessons that I feel like I fought my way through, and I'm really proud that I was able to learn. So that was something that I wanted to pass on, is what does a healthy relationship look like? I mean, I know in fantasy novels especially, there's a lot of things like morally gray characters or assassins that we wouldn't really support in real life. But I wanted to take something like having healthy communication in a romantic relationship and figure out, how do you do that? What does it look like? And things that are so easy for Kyra, like talking about her feelings or her wants or her needs, it's completely foreign to Sebastian. And he has to, because Kyra is so important to him, it's worth the effort to learn how to do this, but it's a process. And that was absolutely 1000% from my real life, learning how to do that and to communicate better. I think all of us, I don't know any person who has grown up unscathed without some kind of trauma at some point in their life, whether it's from family, friends, high school, middle school, your job, it just happens. And so what I wanted to show was you are not the sum of your experiences. You're more than this. And you always have a choice in how you react to things. And that's a big theme that we see in Blood Divided, as you mentioned. Sebastian has a horrible backstory. The backstory I gave that poor boy just breaks my heart. But I wanted to show that you don't have to stay hurt. You don't have to stay broken. You don't have to stay in this position where everything is a reaction. It's hard, but it's completely worth changing and growing. And, I wouldn't be doing justice to my pediatric neuropsychology background if I didn't pull in some of those coping skills and the process of change.
That's very powerful. And I think that one thing that people often complain about with fantasy is that it's so removed from regular life. But the lessons that we learn from, these characters, even though we will never experience what they experience, are so applicable to us here on planet Earth. I think no one has not struggled with communication before, especially in the contents of romance. And like, as you said, everyone has trauma that they're working through. So really love how you're bringing fantasy and ideas that are far beyond our normal spectrum of life, but into incorporating it into what's relevant for us today.
Thank you.
So given the harder subject matter of some of these themes, was there a particular scene or section of the book that was hardest for you to write? I know this might be a hard question to answer given no spoilers, but you can
right, no
spoilers
here. Yes, absolutely. So this isn't giving anything away. At one point in the book, Kyra and Sebastian go to an acquaintance of Sebastian's, and there's a party. And the reason this party is happening is to introduce people who have gold blood and silver blood and start the process of them interacting with one another. And I knew in my mind, I wanted a scene where we had Kyra and we had Sebastian and we had them surrounded by lots of other silver-blooded characters, the Davils in my book, with Kyra being the only golden-blooded character there. I wanted a dinner party scene with Cassandra Clare level of banter in it, where you're hearing from different characters, there's a party, people are getting dressed, it's a lot of fun. And I wrote what I thought was a fabulous scene, and I was the only person who enjoyed it. And again, my brilliant editor was like, you are doing this for you, and that's okay. But if you're not revealing character or advancing the plot, this scene serves no purpose other than you enjoyed writing it. And I sat with that, and I came to the conclusion that, of course, my editor was right. It's amazing when you work with someone over multiple books. They start to know your strengths and weaknesses, and you learn when to trust them and when to push back on things. And so I was so determined to have some kind of a party scene in there that I was like, challenge accepted. So I spent months revising the equivalent of 2 chapters in this book to get it just to the point where it had the fun and the levity that I wanted, but also it revealed character and advanced the plot. So it was worthy of being included in the book. And I will never forget, the rest of the book was so much easier to write than just those couple of chapters.
I love that. And it was so worth it, I think. I think that, like, obviously advancing the plot is good, like developing character is good, but sometimes you just need to have that levity and that banter. So definitely worth it, in my opinion.
Thank you.
So we're going to do a quick round of, rapid fire questions, and then we're going to move to audience Q&A. So if you have any questions in your listening audience, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and feel free to put multiple questions as well. Okay, so rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Okay.
Favorite writing snack or drink?
Ooh, I'm actually not a very big snacker, so I'm going to go with drink, which would be coffee. Powers me every morning.
And how do you drink your coffee?
Hot and black. No sugar, no cream, no milk.
Love it. Straight to the point.
Yeah.
What's the best thing you paid money on specifically to help with your writing?
Oh, okay. There've been so many good things, but I'm actually going to say Highlights Foundation Writing Retreat, which is actually great because that's where I had the chance to meet you. It felt like such an extravagance, paying money to go somewhere and just do nothing but devote time to my writing. And it was not an extravagance. It was a very needed and incredibly helpful use of money to learn how to improve my craft, but also just to connect with the community because being a writer can get really lonely. Sometimes it is just literally you and your laptop. I mean, you know this. So, any chance to go and be around other people who love what I love and are doing what I love, best money I ever spent.
Completely agree. And Highlights Foundation has been the source of so many magical connections. So, very much a fan. Um, best favorite time of day to write?
Ooh. When I was a doctor, my preferred time of writing was usually like 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And then I, get up at the crack of dawn, put on a full day at the hospital, and then write again. Now that I'm not managing a medical job and trying to write, probably early in the morning because I want my evenings shut down with my husband and those demanding cats that we have. So the earlier the better.
How early are we talking?
Let's not get crazy here. I mean, possibly 7:30.
Okay, that
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah, I'm not
reasonable.
one of those like 4:30 a.m. I pop up. No, I am not a morning person. That's where that coffee comes in.
Me too. I have a friend who is an amazing morning writer, and me and her did like a morning Zoom where she would be up at 5 a.m. writing, and I knew she was waiting for me on that Zoom call to join and write. And so that forced me to just, get my butt out of the bed and join at like the ungodly hour of 5 a.m. So I lasted during my revision deadline. I did that. And then after I turned in my deadline, I was like, no more. Goodbye forever.
That's amazing. But you got done what you needed to, and that
Exactly.
accountability is huge. It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite thing that you learned while researching?
That's a really tough question. Favorite thing.
Or just one interesting factoid. It doesn't have to be favorite.
I think for me, I really came to appreciate the creativity of people on Pinterest just
Mm,
because there is so much spectacular artwork and fan art out there. So when I would be creating mood boards or trying to find things that inspired different characters, Pinterest was my go-to for where can I look at different pictures. It's kind of the only place you can type in, fantasy medieval aesthetic king with sword and you'll get a bunch of different pictures no matter how specific you are. And so I loved getting to spend the time on Pinterest researching, even though it was also just fun.
I love that. Like, I cannot imagine what writers did pre-internet, pre-Pinterest, pre all of these different tools.
I
So,
can't even imagine. Yeah, or just sitting there using a typewriter, even.
oh, that too.
I can't fathom. So as much as sometimes I want to, throw technology out the window, I'm also incredibly grateful for it when it works.
I rewatched Little Woman, the remake of the movie recently, and there's a scene where Jo March, the writing character, has all her pages laid out on the floor, and there's like a single candle burning in the middle. And I was just thinking, this is your only copy of your manuscript. What if the candle falls? Like, what happens then?
Right. Right. It's no, now we have our multiple copies saved in multiple places, external
Yeah,
hard drives. Yeah, thank
iCloud, yeah, all of that.
you.
Um, awesome. And then, favorite part of publishing and releasing your novel into the world?
I would say there's two parts. The first part has been connecting with readers. There is nothing better than when someone takes the time to read something that you have written and they fall in love with it. You know, when the first book came out, my mindset was kind of like, you need to get this book into the hands of as many people as possible. And that is absolutely the wrong PR strategy. Thank goodness I was not in charge of my own PR and had a team who was able to redirect me, because what you really want is to get your books into the right hands, the hands of people who love YA fantasy, who love the enemies to lovers trope, who are all about found family and grumpy sunshine romance. And so when someone connects with something that you write and they take the time to send you a message or create fan art and send it to you, it's the most touching, humbling, and overwhelming feeling ever. And it's incredible. And I think the second part of that has been meeting and connecting with other authors. You know, it's terrifying to step into a new career as someone who, I don't have an MFA. I don't have the typical kind of writing pedigree that I feel like I should have. And so I've been amazed at the warm welcome that I've gotten from so many incredible authors. And it's really been amazing for me to see how collaborative it can be, because especially as we know in society, among many people, but among women in particular, there's such a push for competition, and that it's either or instead of both and. And I've loved connecting with so many incredible women authors in particular, just to say, we're in this together and how can we support each other? And if something is going well for me, how can I use that to help you? And seeing people who are doing amazing things reach out and help and support me has just been incredible.
Oh, that makes me emotional. It's such a great point, and I think that what we have here in the book community is so special and so rare. There's very much a sense of solidarity between authors and not that sense of competition that you might find in other industries. And as you were speaking, Katie, I was reminded of a book I read recently. It's called Range, Why Generalists Do Well or Flourish in a Specialized World. And the argument the book is trying to make is that people who come from these, atypical backgrounds, such as yourself, where you tried out one industry, realized you were interested in something else instead, pivoted perhaps a bit later in your life than most people do, actually really bring a lot to the table and are more creative when they approach these problems that, industry B faces while they worked in industry A for much of their career and much of their life. So definitely don't devalue your background. I think it makes you a very special writer, and you write something that no one else could write because of your background, even though you don't have an MFA or you don't have the accolades that people who, from day one wanted to be a writer might have.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's definitely, I do think you bring a different energy to something when you have worked to get there, and when you've explored other options and really decided wholeheartedly,
Exactly.
this is what I want to put my time, energy, money, and sanity into, is doing this.
Yeah. And for some of the medical scenes in the book, I was like, this must be really accurate.
It's very true. Yes, there were definitely things that I pulled from. I mean, books were such a way that I connected with patients. I mean, I specialized in working with teenage cancer patients, which is not the happiest of populations to begin with. And I specialized in kids with brain tumors and leukemia. So usually the last thing these kids wanted to talk about when you were interacting with them was their cancer. Something they would always talk about is, are you reading anything good? What's your favorite book? There were times that it was a book I hadn't heard of. The hospital would get it. I'd read it. We'd go through it together. Books are phenomenal, not just for making connections, but for really allowing people a place to see themselves reflected. And they're also an escape. To a kid in a hospital room who's just had a bone marrow transplant and isn't leaving that hospital for 6 months, books are an incredible escape. And I don't think I realized that until I was on the medical side of it. And now that I'm on the author side, it's amazing to think that hopefully my book will find its way into into some kids' hands and provide them a much needed escape at an important time in their life.
Definitely. I love that. Um, cool. So we have around 13 minutes left. If anyone in the audience has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. Oh, I see we have some questions already. So, oh, I love this one from Lenore. When Netflix or Apple comes calling, who do you envision playing Kyra and Sebastian?
Lenore, you're amazing. Lenore is an incredible author in her own right, so I'm so honored she's here tonight. It's funny because one thing that I really don't do in my books is spend a lot of time describing the character's physical features. With Kyra, we know she has dark skin, she has black hair, and she has blue eyes. That's kind of all I said about her. And the reason I didn't want to go completely in depth is because I like for readers to be able to picture the characters the way the characters appear to them. And so for me, I don't really picture any particular actors or actresses playing the characters, because I'd be interested to see what the casting director would choose. To me, it's all about who would be able to bring the right personality to the part, and what they look like is completely secondary. So if it was someone who could convey Kyra's stubborn sense of justice and her ability to hold the attention of a crowd as she's giving a talk, or if we could find someone who could be as surly and sullen as Sebastian, but who also is this very kind animal lover that he would never admit to being. Those are the things that I would look for in someone playing the characters, and whatever they looked like, who knows? I would be as excited as everyone else to see.
That's so funny because you must be the first author I've spoken to which has a similar approach that I do, which is I'm not very visual in the sense that I find an actor or actress to model my characters after. I just go based off of vibes. And so when people ask me that, I'm always like, whoever wants to play them.
Exactly.
But I know actors who have, or I know writers who have their Pinterest board up from day one with the exact person that they have in mind as they're describing the physical characteristics. So it just goes to show you everyone has their unique approach to writing.
That's what I love about it.
Jennifer asks, what are you working on now?
Oh, that's a great question. So the third book in the Fell Serpent Chronicles series is finished. It is coming. It has a pub date of October 2024. I just saw some cover art for it recently. I'm so thrilled what the cover for the third book is going to look like. So that's currently going out for copy edits, proofreading, all that kind of stuff, because just because I'm a writer doesn't mean I know anything about grammar or punctuation. And thank goodness there are people out there who are so much better about that than I am. I am currently working on a standalone middle grade novel. After 3 young adult fantasies with big themes, sweeping character arcs, I needed something smaller for myself, for my own sanity. And so I've actually been working with the Novelry, which is an organization based out of England, and they have some fantastic workshops, and you get paired with a writing coach. And so I've been working with Melanie Conklin to develop this middle grade story, and it is a middle grade contemporary, but there is a dash of fantasy in it, because I don't think it would be me if there wasn't something magical in there. So we're making really good progress with that, and I hope to have some more updates to share regarding that in the next few months.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you share like 1 to 2 more words about what that project is? I'm just very intrigued.
Yes, only because you ask me and I can't say no.
It's like 1 or 2 words.
Yes,
no spoilers.
Absolutely. Okay, I will tell you, the magic part of it, there is a dinosaur character.
Ooh.
And I will tell you, he is an easily terrified T-Rex who completely falls apart every time he gets scared.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Yeah, I won't say any more. But just
Sounds good.
picture a small T-Rex skeleton that every time it gets scared, bones explode up into the air and fall down into a little pile.
It's always the funniest when the people who look scary on the outside are actually just, cinnamon rolls on the inside.
Exactly, exactly. And that's going to be a big part of what happens in that book, and the importance of not making assumptions about other people.
Yeah. Oh, this is a great question. Were there any other scenes that you wrote for yourself that you were able to edit and still include?
Oh, that is a really, really good one. Yes. There is a chapter, and this again kind of goes back to the developing friendship between Adonis and Sebastian, where they have a sword fight. And it works because they're just playing around, they're just seeing what each other can do. And it was such a fun scene to write. I love writing fight scenes. You would think I was a complete lunatic if you ever walked in on me writing, because there's a good chance I'm either talking to myself or I'm standing up, walking around, trying to kind of block things out like you would on a film set, but also so I know how to describe things. How do you describe someone's coming at you and you're ducking and moving your hand and all that kind of fun stuff. And so there's a sword fight scene between Sebastian and Adonis, and I had so much fun writing it that it kind of just wrote itself. And I was really glad that it worked and I could find a way to include it, because it was layered. We have them engaging in a physical activity that's fun, but we're also seeing Adonis is a much more capable sword fighter than maybe we thought. We know Sebastian's really spectacular, especially given who he used to be as the Fell Serpent King. And it was just really fun to see him be challenged and to also see him having fun, because aside from his interactions with Kyra, we haven't really seen him doing anything fun that he enjoys for probably most of the first book. I mean, he enjoys his thriving assassination business, but that's different than enjoying doing something with someone else.
That's
So
such a good point.
definitely
And you know what? It's funny because I didn't even notice that, because you juxtapose his character with Kyra really well. And so you're able to give the reader a break despite Sebastian being more of the moodier sort most of the time. And so it doesn't feel like you're constantly in that, grim, sad state for the book. And you also understand where Sebastian is coming from. So it's not, that kind of person who's always just grumpy no matter what, even if it's a great day. Like, that's not Sebastian, clearly.
No.
But that is so fun. And I'm curious, when you were writing it, were you like ducking yourself and like acting out emotions?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I was, going on YouTube and looking for choreographed fight scenes and how do you hold a sword and what are some of the proper terms for it. It was a whole education for a few sentences in a chapter, but isn't that how it always goes?
That's the joy and also the pain of writing.
Exactly.
Let's do one last question, and this is a great question to end on. It's very creative. If you had a cipher of your own, what would he be?
Oh, I love this question. So the whole concept of ciphers, which are animals who are paired with people across their lifespan to provide guidance and kind of act a little bit as an external conscience. I don't want to tear up here. I'll cry my contacts out. The idea of ciphers was based off of my yellow Labrador, Dante, who was the absolute love of my life. I got him when he was 6 weeks old, and he was with me through thick and thin, through the absolute lowest, most horrible, worst points of my life. And it was like he was psychic. It was like I could hear him talk. He knew what I was thinking, and it inspired the idea of a relationship between a person and an animal where they could communicate telepathically with each other. And unfortunately, I had to say goodbye to him 4 years ago due to complications with diabetes. And it was awful. I still have not recovered. I don't have another dog. I don't know when that will happen. You know, thankfully I have these 2 cats now. But yeah, if I had to pick another cipher, I don't know what it would be, because he was so it for me, and a part of him will always be with me and continues to run through these books. He would lay at the foot of my bed while I would read things out loud. And so, you know, my biggest disappointment was that he didn't survive to see the publication of the first book. As crazy as that sounds for a dog not seeing it, that would have been incredibly special. But I like to think he knows.
Thank you for sharing that. And I completely relate on so many levels. I would say this is something that someone told me, because I was always writing for my grandmother, similar to you. I was really sad when my grandmother did not live to see me publish my debut novel. And someone told me, your grandmother never had any doubt that you would publish that novel. It was only you who doubted. And I would say the same for Dante. Dante knows. He's up in heaven or wherever,
Love that.
knowing that you are writing books, and he's proud of you. So even though he wasn't here physically, I'm sure there was
massive
zero
air
doubt.
hug. You, thank you.
This has been such a pleasure, Katie. Thank you so much for your time and for chatting about Blood Divided. Everyone, please pick up your books if you haven't already. This is a book that we all need right now, just to be able to get away from reality and you name it.
Thank you so incredibly much for being here. I could not have had a more amazing in-conversation partner. If you haven't already, please check out KX Song's book, An Echo in the City, and be on the lookout for her upcoming adult fantasy novel. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
And I'll just repeat what's been said, because both of them need, to be praised. Incredible. What a great conversation. It truly was really so interesting. And that last part was very touching. So I've just been sitting with that. But if you haven't purchased this yet, and I'm seeing some questions about Rain Returned, we'll send that to you too.
Absolutely.
Go online. You can get it. No problem. We're happy to sell it to you. Happy to sell Blood Divided to you. And if you order them now, there's a weird pop-up on my screen. Okay. If you order them now, you'll get a book plate. So it's kind of signed in a way. Like, you get to feel like it's signed, and we'll send that to you, and it'll be really fun and exciting. So you should order that so that you can have something signed by Katie. And that's going to be really huge and big for all of us. But I just want to say thank you again. Thank you so much for spending time with us and doing this. Oh, it looks like some people sent some nice congratulations and appreciations in the Q&A chat. But thank you all. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, KX. Thank you, everybody. And I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. I'm pulling you two to the green room.
All
Goodbye,
right.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.